I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
That was Donald Trump's vice presidential pick nearly 3 years ago, laying out what is now understood to be a central part of the Project 2025 vision, purging the federal government independent expertise and replacing with, in Vance's words, our people, right? Corrupt pro-Trump loyalists. Now, Trump sort of tried something like this last time around. He really did. It was an effort that journalist Michael Lewis chronicled in The Fifth Risk, one of the greatest books about the Trump era. And it outlines just how crucial that independent expertise is to not just the day-to-day function of the government, but for preventing catastrophes like, for instance, nuclear war. Now, in an upcoming piece for the Washington Post, Lewis pushes that theme forward by exploring just how critical the unheralded work of the vast civil service is, the very people Donald Trump wants to purge under Project 2025. Michael Lewis, the Washington Post opinions guest writer. His latest book, Going Infinite, about Sam Bankman-Fried, is available now in paperback, and he joins me now. You know, Michael, I thought about The Fifth Risk when I saw the Project 2025 section about the civil service, and also when I first heard that J.D. Vance clip, because I think that book, more than any of it I've read, is sort of about just how sort of central and essential exactly that vast expertise basis is to running the entire country.
It's like one of the great untold stories of our era. The civil service. I mean, it's what the president is supposed to be managing, or at least not screwing up. And when you actually go in and ask what they do, when you don't just hand wave and say deep state and all the rest, you find the most amazing stories. I mean, it's not boring. It sounds boring, but they're people who are engaged passionately with subjects they've become obsessed with and solving problems that are just not going to be solved any other way than by this instrument. And so for me, I wrote The Fifth Risk. I was kind of shocked by how great the material was and kind of shocked by how receptive the audience was to it. So what we've done in the Washington Post starting Tuesday, I've brought in 6 other writers. I picked 6 writers I just loved, and I said, here's the literary opportunity of your career. And we have kind of parachuted them into the different parts of the federal government. And these pieces are going to run once a week up until the election. And the writer, the only brief was, the writer was told, go find something that interests you. And I swear to God, after about 5 minutes, they all came out and said, how did I not know about this? How did I not know these characters were as good as they are? And so that's what this series is. And I hope people will read it, because I think it's sort of, the country needs a civics lesson.
Yeah, and that point about, one of the things that's come through when I've had opportunities to interact with folks who are sort of in the federal bureaucracy in different ways. A lot of times, again, these are people that are really take it seriously what they're doing, whether they're sort of checking hormone levels, or they're doing soil erosion work, or they're, whatever it is. They really are doing it because they care about it. And also, you just have no idea what their politics are. You're talking about literally none. They could have whatever politics. What they're focused on is doing the job. And there's something so important about that, and also so ominous to me about the phrase "our people" as a recipe for replacing that knowledge base with who signs the loyalty card.
Yeah, it's exactly right, because you actually, their politics are largely irrelevant. They are dealing with problems that no one else is going to deal with. And they're not even thinking of their politics. And the other thing about them, as a group, it's like the kind of people who are, I don't know, my character, it's going to sound boring if I tell you about it, but when you read, you're not going to believe how great a character he is, has spent his entire career figuring out how to prevent coal mine roofs from falling on the heads of coal miners. A problem that, you or I never thought about, but killed 50,000 coal miners in the 20th century. And it's like a huge deal. And his it's a 30-year odyssey, and it's an incredible story. But this guy, and I'm not going to tell you his name, you can read about it, but this guy has never once asked for attention. And it's like the opposite. It's not just of Trump, obviously the opposite of Trump, but sort of the opposite of the impulse in the person who stands up to run for office. It's like, it's not look at me. It's sort of the carrot in the school play, but they're like the most important person here. And the goal, my goal was just like, well, first, as I say, it was literary opportunism. The stories are so good, but it's sort of like stop looking at the thing you're looking at all the time and start paying attention to this, because this is critical. This is life or death stuff, and you need to know about it. You need to know about it before you decide who you're going to vote for.
You know, one thing that points to when you talk about sort of the opposite of the person who sort of runs for office is that of all the things we think of that person's job being, you know, the sort of some sort of symbolic role, right, where they sort of channel the nation, they talk to the nation about stuff, the sort of proposer of legislation and budgets. The thing they are more than anything is the boss at the top of the org chart that is all the people from SEAL Team 6 to the guy that works on the problem of coal mines collapsing. Like that's literally what the job is.
It's literally what the job is. And if you have someone in the office who is just constantly abusing and insulting the people, that can't be a recipe for successful management, right? I mean, we had an episode yesterday, the day before, when Trump went into the military cemetery and tried to use it for his political purposes, which is actually against the rules, and got in that kerfuffle with the employee at the military cemetery. That what no one said is that the person in the Department of Veterans Affairs who runs that sacred part of our government, how we bury our war dead, that person turned it from a kind of only kind of well-run thing into the best-run organization in the country. There's an operation in the University of Michigan that ranks sort of the consumer satisfaction or customer satisfaction of private and public institutions, and those people are number one. I mean, they have like Federal Express, and it's like Trump's rolling in there and just kind of using it for his purposes, and it happens. And people say, "Oh, those people who do the work in the cemetery, they're functionaries or bureaucrats." No, they are delivering a service that is a kind of sacred duty of the country, and they're better at it than anybody. And we don't even know how that happened or why. And I think this is like a failure of the citizen to understand the government. And that's sort of what we need to step in and correct. And these stories are so fun. I'm hoping that everybody reads them and goes, God, I want to hear more about that. Because really, it isn't just Trump that is a problem here. It's like nobody's really telling the stories, and people don't know they need to know them.
Yeah, I'm psyched for this series that's going to come out. Let me ask you this as a final question. One way I think you can interpret this, I think this is true a little bit, I'll say, in New York City governance. So New York City has its own version of this and actually has an incredible civil service at the sort of municipal level. There's all sorts of amazing people with expertise doing stuff and running the subways and public health. And one thing you could say, and I'd like to get your response to this, is like, look, because that repository of expertise is so good, because there's institutional vibrancy and resilience, if you get a Trump, it's all right. It'll pass. They'll be fine. They're sort of cordoned off. It doesn't matter that much because of, quote, the sort of deep state, basically, right? Some sort of permanent governing apparatus which is immune to it. And what do you think about that notion?
It's false, because the first thing he wants to do is politicize the civil service, is remove the civil service's ability to protect itself from the politicians and make them all political appointees. We already have a little bit of a problem that too many of our people in the federal government are political appointees. It's crazy, the number. He wants to make it a patronage.
Too many, yes.
He's taking it back to like the 19th century. So that will make it very hard for things to get done well.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want the guy inspecting the fire safety codes to be someone who really knows about fire safety, or like, he was Mayor Daley's buddy? It's like basically the question.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Or Mayor Daley's neighbor. That's what we're looking at. Michael Lewis, whose book Going Infinite is now out in paperback. We're going to look for that series in the Washington Post. Will be coming up the next few weeks. Thanks a lot.